In the far future, human suffering is not a matter of fate, but of machinery, neural lobotomies by the tens of thousands, tribunal-ordered implants, and bodies stripped of all autonomy to feed the engines of empire. These are not tragic exceptions. They are the default outcomes for countless citizens across the Imperium and beyond. How does a society reach the point where the worst possible fates, total conversion, weaponized penance, and metaphysical annihilation, become standard operating procedure? To answer, we will expose the 10 most horrifying ends a human can face in Warhammer 40,000, and trace exactly how these inescapable horrors are imposed, processed, and normalized. The most chilling figures are only the beginning. On the Forge world of Esteban III, 60,000 workers were selected for conversion in a single night. The order came directly from the Adeptus Mechanicus, responding to a production shortfall with a solution as swift as it was absolute. Lobotomy teams moved through the manufactoria, stripping away higher brain functions with surgical precision. Each subject's mind was excised and replaced by neural control units and standardized augmetics. The process was neither punishment nor mercy. It was a bureaucratic response to inefficiency, a living body reclassified as property, optimized for endless labor. Servitorization is the Imperium's answer to the ban on artificial intelligence. Where the men of iron once rebelled, now only flesh and circuitry remain. The Adeptus Mechanicus oversees this transformation with clinical detachment. Mago's directives outline every step: sedation, cranial incision, removal of the frontal lobes, insertion of data jacks, and the sealing of augmetic limbs. The end result is a mechanized thrall, incapable of independent thought, programmed for a single task, whether hauling munitions, maintaining reactor cores, or standing sentry for centuries without rest. No trace of the original person survives. Official records describe the outcome as total erasure of self. Audit logs from Esteban III note that not a single converted worker retained autonomy or memory. Once the procedure is complete, the new servitor is assigned a serial number, logged as equipment, and consigned to the endless production lines. The only remnants of humanity are occasional mechanical murmurs, static-laced fragments of speech quickly silenced by tech priests. For the Imperium, these are not failures, but reminders that flesh is only valuable when it serves. The fate of the Servitor is not death, but a permanent reduction to function, an existence without identity, will, or end. In the sentencing chambers of the ecclesiarchy, judgment is swift and irreversible. Those condemned as heretics, deviants, or failed penitents face a fate reserved for the most dangerous souls: Arco-flagellant conversion. The process begins not with surgery, but with ritual. Confessors read litanies of purification as purity seals are pressed to bare flesh, each one a reminder of sins that can never be forgiven. Chains bind the subject to a cold slab. Tech adepts move in silence, fitting neural whips and electrographs along the spine and skull. The penitent's body is flooded with combat drugs and suppressants, burning away resistance. Augmetic stimulants are wired directly into the heart, ready to flood the bloodstream with berserker rage at a single command. The most critical implant is the Rage Trigger, a device slotted into the base of the neck. This implant holds the subject in a state of enforced calm until activated by a handler. Once released, the Arco-flagellant becomes a living weapon. Muscles convulse, pain is drowned in adrenaline, and all memory of self is swept aside by engineered fury. In these moments, fragments of the original mind sometimes surface. Witnesses have reported hearing battle cries or pleas for mercy, echoes of a lost identity quickly drowned in the roar of sanctioned violence. Deployment is as brutal as the conversion itself. Arco-flagellants are chained in holding pens, each one a coiled storm of muscle and hate. When the ecclesiarchy unleashes them upon the enemy, neural whips drive them forward, heedless of wounds or exhaustion. The body endures until it fails. The mind, already erased, cannot break again. There is no reprieve, no hope of redemption. Once condemned, the Arco-flagellant's existence is reduced to cycles of restraint and unleashed carnage, each battle a fresh obliteration of self. For the Imperium, this is faith made manifest, punishment weaponized, identity annihilated in the Emperor's name. A demon host is not the result of accident or mutation, but of deliberate, forbidden ritual. In the vaults of the Ordo Malleus, radical inquisitors gather in shadowed circles, tracing ward lattices and psychic anchors across the floor. Their goal is simple, if appalling, to bind a warp entity inside the body of a living human, creating a weapon no loyal servant of the Emperor would ever publicly sanction. The Tranche Conclave method, first codified in M 41.889, prescribes the use of rare alchemic reagents, sacrificial glyphs, and a living vessel, often a condemned heretic or an expendable acolyte. The subject is chained within a circle of sanctified silver, their flesh inscribed with runes. As the ritual unfolds, the psychic anchors flare, pinning the demon as it tears through the veil, fusing spirit and body in a single catastrophic moment. The result is a permanent union. The human mind is not destroyed, but suppressed, buried beneath the will of the demon, surfacing only in moments of instability or torment. Inquisitorial records describe hosts whose eyes weep blood as they beg for release, their pleas twisted by the entity within. The Eisenhorn pattern, notorious for its reliability, employs a lattice of wards to contain the demon's power, but nothing can guarantee control. Even under the tightest bindings, the demon host is an unstable asset, a tool of last resort, deployed when all other measures have failed. Long-term existence for the host is a waking nightmare. Every sense is hijacked, every thought drowned beneath the endless malice of the warp. The body is reshaped at the demon's whim, bones warping, flesh distorting in response to its moods. Occasionally, fragments of the original soul claw their way to the surface, only to be crushed again as the demon reasserts its dominance. For the radical inquisitor, the demon host is a calculated sacrifice, one human soul traded for the fleeting advantage of a bound horror. For the victim, it is an eternity of suppression and violation, with no hope of release, no prospect of redemption, and no end but eventual oblivion. On the outskirts of the Trisolia siege, a captain of the Planetary Defense Force pressed his vox bead, voice thick with panic as his flesh began to rebel. The transformation did not come as a reward, but as a final, grotesque punishment for devotion gone awry. Mutation cascaded through his body, warping bone and muscle in a matter of minutes. Fingers stretched and split into writhing tendrils. Eyes multiplied and slid across his face. Skin erupted in boils that burst into chitinous plates. The captain's last coherent words dissolved into a torrent of gibberish, his pleas for mercy replaced by reflexive shrieks and animal howls. Chaos spawn are not chosen by the gods. They are discarded. For every champion who ascends, thousands are cast aside, their forms twisted beyond recognition. The process is neither swift nor merciful. Tissue mutates in endless flux, regenerating and decaying at once, locked in a cycle of perpetual agony. Limbs sprout and retract. Mouths open where no mouth should be, each new configuration more monstrous than the last. The mind collapses under the strain, memories shredded by the raw energies of the warp. What remains is a beast driven by instinct and torment, incapable of speech or reason. This is the ultimate mockery of ambition. On warp-saturated battlefields, these creatures roam without purpose, attacking friend and foe alike. Their bodies resist death, healing wounds in seconds, only to tear themselves anew. To witness a chaos spawn is to see the ultimate mockery of ambition, a living warning scrawled in flesh, where the only constant is pain and the only memory is loss. Their existence is a cautionary example, systemic and ever-present in the dark calculus of Warhammer 40,000. A world under Tyranid invasion is stripped of all distinction within hours. The process begins the moment the Hive Fleet shadow falls. Ripper swarms, guided by synaptic signals, fan out across the ruins, consuming every living thing in their path. Human bodies are reduced to pulp by rows of serrated jaws. Armor and bone dissolve under a flood of corrosive saliva, breaking down tissue into a nutrient-rich slurry. There is no moment of negotiation, no plea for mercy. The hive mind does not recognize individuals, only potential biomass. Once the Ripper's finished, digestion pools open across the landscape. Victims, dead or alive, are swept into these pits, submerged in a churning sea of enzymes. Within minutes, all structure is lost. Cells rupture, proteins unravel, and DNA is torn apart. Nothing of the original organism survives intact. The resulting soup is pumped through capillary towers, routed directly to the hive fleet's processing nodes. Here, every molecule is cataloged and reassigned: calcium for carapace, proteins for muscle, organic acids for synaptic fluid. Human genetic material is not merely destroyed, it is rewritten, fed into the next generation of Tyranid bioforms. No mind, memory, or soul persists. The fate is not suffering, but absolute consumption. The hive mind erases all trace of self, recycling every component for its own evolution. For the Tyranids, this is not cruelty or malice. It is efficiency on a galactic scale. The end state is oblivion, existence dissolved, identity forgotten, each life reduced to raw matter in service of the swarm. Orc raids rarely end with a clean death. Captured humans are herded at gunpoint, forced into the chaos of Orc encampments where survival hinges on utility alone. Runthards, a crude mix of overseer and tormentor, keep order with shock prods and squigs trained to bite the slow or the weak. There are no rules, only the whims of the biggest orc and the law of exhaustion. Labor is constant, hauling scrap, loading shells, or churning out ammunition for the next wog. Any sign of resistance is met with a beating or a swift execution to set an example. Once a captive can no longer work, they are cast aside, sometimes left to starve, sometimes fed to the squigs, and on rare occasions simply butchered for sport. In Orc society, a human slave is just another tool, worn down, discarded, and forgotten without ceremony or record. The Departamento Minatorum issues its directives without emotion or hesitation. On Armageddon, siege records note the collection of 1.2 million guardsman bodies in the aftermath of a single campaign. Each corpse is tagged, logged, and transferred to the reclamation districts. Industrial grinders, built for efficiency, reduce flesh and bone to a nutrient-rich paste. Ration issue memos, stamped with the Munitorum seal, authorize the conversion of this biomass into standardized bars, corpse-starch, delivered to the front lines as the only available sustenance. Logistics clerks process the paperwork, tracking quotas and output with precision. There are no names, no memorials, only serial numbers and weights. The dead are recycled, their identities erased, their remains consumed by those who survived the siege. For the Imperium, this is not sacrilege or mercy, but a necessary function. Even in death, dignity is stripped away, and the body becomes another resource, anonymous, processed, and forgotten. In Warp Storm records logged after the fall of Cadia, Astropathic choirs vanished mid-transmission, their bodies incinerated in an instant, while their psychic signals continued to echo for months. These echoes are not mere static. They are the last shreds of human consciousness, trapped and drifting in the immaterium, repeating fragments of distress calls and half-remembered prayers. Without a body, these souls endure an eternity of formless agony, pulled apart by demonic predators, reshaped by raw warp energy, and fed upon until all memory dissolves. There is no passage to the Emperor, no hope of rescue. The astropath's identity unravels, reduced to a flickering signal that lures the living into the same fate. In the warp, the soul becomes both fuel and torment, condemned to an endless cycle of dissolution, awareness flickering long after the flesh is gone. In the grim reality of Warhammer 40,000, these fates are not cautionary tales. They are routine outcomes written into the machinery of every world and every war. For most, oblivion is a mercy rarely granted. As the Imperium and its enemies endure, so does the certainty of these horrors. The question remains: what value does humanity hold when survival itself demands its erasure? Share your thoughts below.